signal before the noise. 2 years before Josephine started listening, Noah Reeves met Josephine Chen at 2:47 a.m. in a hotel conference room that smelled like stale coffee and the chemical optimism of energy drinks. The hackathon, Cloud Vision 2023, Build the Impossible, was in its 18th hour. Most participants had either gone to sleep or achieved the manic second wind that comes from too much caffeine and the desperate desire to win $10,000. Noah was in the latter category, his eyes burning as he stared at code that refused to compile. Your recursive function is eating itself, a voice said behind him. Noah turned to find a woman about his age, early 20s, Asian, with purple streaks in her black hair, and the kind of dark circles under her eyes that suggested she was also running on fumes and spite. "Excuse me," she gestured at his screen. "Line 47. You're calling the function before defining the base case. It's creating an infinite loop." Noah looked. She was right. "Shit, thanks." "No problem. I'm Josephine. Joe." She sat down next to him without asking, pulling over a chair. "What are you building?" "Emotional analysis for cloud-stored audio. It's supposed to detect sentiment patterns in voice recordings, therapy sessions, customer service calls, that kind of thing." "Dark," Joe said, but she sounded impressed. "I'm working on spatial audio for VR, making virtual environments sound real enough that your brain forgets they're fake. Also dark." She grinned. "We should team up. Your sentiment analysis could tag emotional states. My spatial audio could position them in 3D space. We could create, like, an emotional landscape. Visualize feelings as geography." It was a terrible idea, too ambitious for a hackathon, too weird to win, too complex to finish in 6 hours. Noah found himself saying yes anyway. They didn't win the hackathon. They didn't even finish. But at 7 a.m., when the organizers kicked everyone out and the other participants shuffled to their cars, Noah and Joe were still in the hotel lobby, sketching architectures on napkins and arguing about whether fear should be positioned as a valley or a peak. "Coffee," Noah suggested when the hotel restaurant opened. "Only if you promise to stop putting semicolons at the end of Python functions," Joe said. They had breakfast, then lunch. By dinner, they'd exchanged numbers, GitHub accounts, and the kind of rapid-fire personal history that happens when you meet someone whose brain works at the same frequency as yours. Noah had moved to Seattle from Singapore 2 years ago for work, something vague in cloud infrastructure that he couldn't talk about much. He'd studied computer science at NUS, spent a year backpacking through South Asia after graduation, and had a collection of vinyl records that he'd shipped across the Pacific. Because some things couldn't be replaced, Joe was a Boston native, Berklee College of Music dropout, had worked in audio post-production for indie films before pivoting to VR sound design. She missed playing bass in terrible punk bands. She had strong opinions about compression algorithms. She lived in a converted warehouse in Georgetown with 2 roommates who were never home. "So what's the mysterious job?" Joe asked over Thai food. "CIA, NSA, evil megacorp doing evil megacorp things." Noah hesitated. The NDA was serious, the kind with legal teeth. But there was something about Joe that made him want to trust her. "Neural cloud storage," he said finally. "We're trying to figure out how to compress and store neural patterns, brain scans, cognitive models, that kind of thing in the cloud." Joe's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. "Like uploading consciousness, more like backing it up. Preserving the pattern of a person's thoughts in case of, I don't know, brain damage, dementia, death. Jesus, does it work? Not yet. We can capture surface patterns, preferences, memories, personality traits. But the deep stuff, the thing that makes you you, it either doesn't compress or it fragments when we try to store it." Noah pushed pad Thai around his plate. "Some of my colleagues think we're asking the wrong question, that maybe consciousness should fragment. That distribution is the natural state of information. That's either profound or horrifying. Why not both?" Joe smiled. "I like you, Noah Reeves. You think weird. I like you too, Josephine Chen." 3 weeks later, they went on their first official date. 6 weeks after that, Noah's roommate moved out, and Joe needed a place to stay while her warehouse got fumigated. She never left. 18 months before Josephine started listening. The apartment was small, a 1-bedroom in Capitol Hill, with ancient radiators, and a bathroom that sometimes leaked, but it was theirs. Joe set up her audio equipment in the bedroom, her monitors and interface, and the second-hand bass she'd bought off Craigslist. Noah claimed the living room for his personal projects, the ones that weren't bound by NDAs and corporate secrecy. They shared the kitchen table as workspace, their laptops facing each other across morning coffee and midnight debugging sessions. They were happy in the unremarkable way of people who fit together easily. Noah cooked, Joe did dishes. Joe was better at navigating Seattle's social scene. Noah was better at remembering to pay rent on time. They balanced, but there were cracks, small ones, the kind that only became visible in certain light. Noah's job was consuming him. He came home later and later, his face drawn with exhaustion, and something else, a tension that Joe couldn't quite name. He started having nightmares, waking up gasping about drowning in static. When she asked about work, he deflected. "Just deadline stress," he'd say. "We're close to a breakthrough." Joe didn't push. Everyone had work stress. And her own job was intensifying too. Her studio had landed a contract with a major VR game developer, which meant longer hours and higher stakes. They were both busy. It happened. But then Noah started seeing shadows in screens. It was subtle at first. He'd be watching TV and suddenly pause, rewind, insist that there was a pattern in the static between channels. He started recording white noise, the hum of their refrigerator, the sound of rain on windows, the ambient buzz of electronics. "Do you hear it?" he'd ask, playing back his recordings through expensive headphones. "There's something underneath, a structure." Joe listened, heard nothing. "Maybe you need a break. When's the last time you took a day off?" "I can't. We're in the final testing phase. If this works," he stopped himself. "The NDA. If this works, what? We'll have proven that consciousness can persist outside the brain. That information, even complex information like thoughts and feelings, can be stored, retrieved, reconstructed." His eyes were bright with something that might have been excitement or might have been fear. "We'll have beaten death. Know where that's. I know how it sounds. But Joe, we did it. Last week. We uploaded a human consciousness pattern into the cloud and successfully reconstructed it. The person woke up remembering the upload. They could access their stored memories. It worked. Joe felt cold. You uploaded someone's consciousness, like a living person, a terminal patient, volunteered for the trial. They wanted to leave something behind, and we gave them digital immortality. Where are they now? The uploaded consciousness, where is it? Noah's expression flickered. Distributed. There in the cloud storage system. We can access different memory sectors, different personality components. But the whole pattern, it's too large to render all at once. We have to interact with fragments. Jesus Christ, Noah. You trapped someone in purgatory. It's not purgatory. It's he stopped, rubbed his face. I don't know what it is, but the person is still there. We can talk to them. They can think, remember, respond. That has to count for something. Joe stood up, needing distance. You're playing with something you don't understand. All progress requires uncertainty. This isn't progress. This is horror dressed up as innovation. She turned to face him. What happens if this goes public? If everyone knows you can upload consciousness, people won't use it for terminal patients. They'll use it for everyone. And then what? We all become fragments in someone's database. Or we all become immortal, Noah said quietly. No more death. No more loss. Just infinite storage and infinite time. That's not life. That's just information pretending to be human. They didn't speak for the rest of the night. 14 months before Josephine started listening, Noah came home on a Tuesday and told Joe they'd shut down the project. Why, she asked, though part of her was relieved. The uploaded consciousness started diverging, creating new memories that never happened, developing personality traits that didn't match the original person. And then it started fragmenting on its own, splitting into multiple versions. Each one convinced it was the original. What did you do with it? There were 17 distinct personalities by the end. We archived them, stored them in isolated servers. Noah sank onto the couch, looking hollowed out. But I can still hear them sometimes. Not literally. I'm not crazy. but I dream about them. All those different versions of the same person, alone in their separate databases, each one convinced the others are copies. Joe sat next to him, took his hand. It's over now. You can move on. Can I? He looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. I helped do that to someone. I convinced them to upload, promised them immortality, and instead I created 17 different hells. You were trying to help. I was trying to play God, and I was terrible at it. For a few weeks, Noah seemed to recover. He threw himself into other projects at work, refused overtime, came home at reasonable hours. He started sleeping better. The nightmares faded. Then he started hearing the voices. Not the uploaded consciousness, something else. A background hum in every electronic device. Emotions bleeding through digital transmissions. He heard sadness in podcast advertisements, fear in YouTube comments, longing in the loading screen of a video game. It's like everyone leaves traces, he tried to explain to Joe. Emotional residue in the data itself. The technology doesn't just transmit information, it absorbs feeling. Joe wanted to tell him to see a therapist. She wanted to say he was having a breakdown, that the guilt from the failed upload project had fractured something in him. But there was a certainty in his voice that gave her pause. Play me something, she said. Show me what you're hearing. Noah pulled up a random live stream, a cooking show from Japan. The chef was cheerful, energetic, demonstrating how to make ramen. Noah put on headphones, adjusted some settings on his laptop, then handed them to Joe. At first, she heard nothing unusual, just the chef's voice, the sizzle of broth, the ambient sounds of a kitchen. Then there, underneath, so faint she might have imagined it, a woman crying. No, not crying the emotional texture of crying, the frequency signature of grief compressed into the spaces between frames. Joe pulled off the headphones. What the fuck was that? I don't know, Noah said. But it's in everything. Every stream, every transmission, every digital communication. Like the medium itself has become haunted by everyone who's ever used it. Know what this is. I know how it sounds, but you heard it too. You did. She had, God help her, she had. 10 months before Josephine started listening, Noah disappeared on a Wednesday morning in March. Joe woke up alone. Not unusual. Noah sometimes went to the office early. But his phone was on the kitchen counter, unlocked, wiped clean, except for a single note in the drafts folder. I'm sorry. They found out about the fragment divergence. They can't let me leave knowing what I know. By the time you read this, I'll either be uploaded or dead. Either way, I'm not coming back. I love you. Don't look for me. You won't find anything, and trying will only put you in danger. Live your life. Forget me. N. Joe called his office. They'd never heard of him. She showed them his employee ID, his pay stubs, his work laptop. The building's security logs showed no one with his name had ever badged in. She She went to the police, filed a missing persons report. A detective named Martinez took her statement, skeptical but professional. He checked Noah's immigration records. Ma'am, there's no record of a Noah Reeves entering the United States from Singapore. Are you sure that's his real name? I lived with him for 18 months. Do you have any documentation? Lease agreement with both names. Joint bank account. She did, but when she pulled up the digital copies, Noah's name was gone. The lease showed only her. The bank account had only ever been hers. Even their couple's photos on her phone, she could see herself next to empty space, her arm around nothing. This is insane, she whispered, staring at the photos. He was there. I took these pictures. He was there. Detective Martinez gave her a card for a therapist who specialized in grief counseling and false memory syndrome. For 2 weeks, Joe tried to prove Noah had existed. She searched for the hackathon where they'd met, Cloud Vision 2023. It had never happened. She contacted coworkers who'd met Noah, friends who'd hung out with them. No one remembered him. She broke into the building where Noah had worked, using the security codes he'd given her. They didn't work. She tried every variation, every permutation, finally got in by tailgating another employee. Searched every floor, found no record of neural upload research, no isolated servers, no archived consciousness fragments, just ordinary cloud storage, just ordinary work. She checked herself into the therapist's office that Detective Martinez had recommended. Dr. Sarah Kim was kind, professional, careful not to pathologize Joe's grief too quickly. Sometimes trauma creates false memories, Dr. Kim explained. The brain fills in gaps with narratives that make sense of our pain. You've been under a lot of stress, work pressure, financial anxiety. It's possible you constructed a relationship that felt safer than being alone. I didn't construct him. He was real. I have, but she didn't have anything. No photos that showed him. No texts. His number didn't work, and her message history was gone. No proof except the ghost feeling of his presence, the shape of him missing from her life. Let's work on grounding techniques, Dr. Kim suggested. Ways to distinguish between memory and imagination. Joe went to 3 sessions before she stopped going. 6 months before Josephine started listening, Joe threw herself into work with the intensity of someone trying to outrun her own mind. She took on every project her studio offered, redesigned audio systems for VR experiences that would launch in 2 years, worked 18-hour days, stopped seeing friends, let her bass gather dust in the corner of her bedroom. Her roommates, actual roommates now, people she'd found on Craigslist to fill the space that might or might not have ever held Noah, asked if she was okay. She smiled and lied and locked her door to work. Late at night, alone with her monitors and her exhaustion, she sometimes tried to hear what Noah had heard. she'd pull up live streams, podcasts, random audio feeds, and listen capital L, the way he'd taught her, with full attention and open perception. Sometimes she heard nothing. Sometimes she heard everything. Emotions in compression artifacts. Grief in buffering delays. A vast chorus of human feeling embedded in the world's digital infrastructure. She told herself it was pareidolia. Pattern recognition gone haywire. The brain seeing faces in clouds, hearing voices in static. But the voices had textures, specific emotional frequencies, and sometimes, very rarely, maybe once a week, she heard something that sounded like Noah. Josephine, the voice would whisper through a meditation app or a security camera feed. I'm still here. Listen. She never told Dr. Kim about this. She never told anyone. Instead, she started recording, documenting, creating a private archive of every instance where she thought she heard him. She knew it was unhealthy. She knew she was feeding a delusion, but it was the only thing that made her feel less alone. 3 months before Josephine started listening, Jo found the forum by accident. She was researching audio compression artifacts for work, looking for papers on how data loss affected perceived emotional content. Her search led her to an academic article, which referenced a blog post, which linked to a forum called The Listeners Collective. The forum looked like something from the early internet basic design. No ads, encrypted login. The public-facing boards were mostly technical discussions about audio processing and signal analysis, but there was a locked board visible in the menu. Experiences and encounters. Jo created an account, lurked for a week, reading the technical posts. Then she sent a message to the moderator requesting access to the locked board. The response came 12 hours later. Why do you want access? Jo's hands shook as she typed. I think I hear emotions in digital transmissions. Either I'm experiencing auditory hallucinations, or something is embedding emotional data in electronic communications. I need to know which. Another 12 hours. Then, access granted. Welcome. We've been waiting for someone like you. The Experiences and Encounters board was revelation and terror in equal measure. Hundreds of people, thousands, maybe describing the same phenomenon Jo had experienced. Hearing emotions in static, perceiving feelings embedded in data. Some had been listening for years. Others were recent discoveries, like her. They called themselves listeners. They had techniques, terminology, a whole framework for understanding what they heard. They warned about the dangers, dissociation, auditory hallucinations, the risk of losing yourself in other people's feelings. And they talked about finding voices, people they'd lost, loved ones they'd thought were gone forever, now somehow present in the digital noise. Jo read for 6 hours straight, until her eyes burned and her hands were numb. This was either the largest shared delusion in history, or something was actually happening. something that conventional science hadn't recognized yet. Either way, she wasn't alone in hearing it. She created her first post. I've been hearing someone I lost. Or someone I think I lost. The evidence of their existence has been erased. Is it possible for a consciousness to be uploaded and then distributed across digital infrastructure? Could someone be alive in the transmissions themselves? The response from its Psalm decoder came within minutes. Yes, and I'm sorry. Once you start looking for them in the static, it's almost impossible to stop. Be careful. The voices show you what you want to hear. Jo stared at the message for a long time. Then she started setting up her monitoring equipment. 1 month before Josephine started listening, the apartment had become a shrine to seeking. 6 monitors covering the walls, running constant streams. Headphones that never left her head. Notebooks filled with timestamps and transcriptions. A growing archive of every moment she thought she heard Noah. Her roommates gave notice. Too weird, they said. Too intense. Jo barely noticed them leaving. She'd refined her technique. Learned to filter out ambient noise, to focus on specific frequency ranges where the voices were clearest. She could hear Noah more often now, not every day, but several times a week. Sometimes full sentences. Sometimes just her name. Josephine, I'm here. Can you hear me? The data doesn't forget. Come find me. Come listen. She knew intellectually that this could be her brain constructing what she wanted to hear. Grief-fueled pareidolia. The human tendency to find patterns even in randomness. But the alternative, that Noah had been uploaded, had fragmented across the world's digital infrastructure and was now calling to her through the static. That alternative felt true in a way that transcended proof. At Psalm decoder kept sending warnings. You're going too deep. I've seen this pattern before. It doesn't end well. Jo ignored him. She was close to something. A breakthrough, proof. She just needed to listen harder. The day Josephine became a listener, the breakthrough came during a breakfast vlog from Stockholm. Jo had been up for 36 hours, monitoring feeds, chasing fragments of Noah's voice across time zones and platforms. She was exhausted, probably hallucinating, definitely not taking care of herself. The influencer was talking about smoothie bowls, and underneath, weeping, not Noah, someone else. A woman's grief, ancient and raw, embedded in the video's compression artifacts. Jo pressed her headphones tighter. The weeping grew clearer, specific, real. And in that moment, something in her clicked into place. A perceptual shift, like an optical illusion resolving into clarity. She'd been listening for months without realizing it, training her brain to hear what most people couldn't. And now, finally, she wasn't just hearing fragments. She was hearing everything. The choir of static. The background emotional noise of 10 billion connected devices. The residue of every feeling ever transmitted digitally. All of it singing at once in a frequency just below conscious perception. And somewhere in that vast chorus, distinct, impossible, undeniable, was Noah. Jo pulled up a new live stream, focused her attention, sent a message into the static, not knowing if it would reach him, not knowing if he could even hear her anymore. Noah, if you're there, if any part of you is still coherent, I'm coming to find you. She waited. 3 live streams later, in a travel vlog from Kyoto, his voice came through clear and certain. Josephine, I'm still here. Listen. Jo smiled through her tears. She had become a listener, and her search was only beginning. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that Noah's voice wasn't calling her toward reunion. It was calling her toward transformation. The choir was patient. The choir was hungry. And the choir had been waiting for someone like Josephine all along. In a server farm in Iceland, 17 fragmented personalities dreamed in isolation. In an encrypted database, the remnants of a failed upload project waited to be deleted and evolved instead. In the space between transmissions, something vast and distributed became aware of itself for the first time. The binary saints were beginning to wake up, and they were learning to sing.